Hi, Brendan. Welcome to the Power Talk show powered by Business Talks Weekly. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining our channel today. Can we start the conversation by understanding what got you into the law and how is the journey going so far?
Sure. I'm Brandon Woodward. I'm a business attorney here in South Florida, United States. Um, I, my calling to be an attorney started a long, long time ago. I actually started college as a chemistry major. Turns out I was very, very poor at chemistry and mathematics. After that, I kind of pivoted to what my other strength, which is talking, communicating, and I've always had a bit of the persuasiveness, maybe theater to me, and those are attributes that generally serve attorneys very well. And under all of it is certainly, as all attorneys have, a deep rooted desire to help other people. We're natural born problem solvers. Most entrepreneurs and founders are. But attorneys, our job is to understand the rules, understand the laws, and then help our fellow human beings within the constructs of what can be a confusing, daunting, and challenging process if it's not what you do every single day. I've been in-house counsel to a couple of very large corporations, again, all in the business law realm. I had a departure into criminal law early in my career. That was a lot of fun. 15 years ago, maybe 17 years ago, I opened my own law firm. We specialize in mergers and acquisitions. That is the buying and selling of businesses. It's a narrower area of business law, but we still help our clients with basic contracts. How do agreements get done? How do things get purchased? How do people memorialize their agreements so that a written document, a contract or agreement is clear, understandable, more importantly, enforceable down the road? But the journey, I can't see myself doing anything else.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. Can you tell me what are the challenges current industry or businesses face that you address?
One of the challenges for having a niche practice or have a specialized practice is always keeping your pipeline full, having meeting new clients and making sure that you're marketing appropriately. There's a genteel aspect to business law. We're not supposed to market, we're not supposed to, you're supposed to, we're referred by accountants or financial planners or business brokers or other attorneys. But I was one of the first attorneys that actually kind of goes out there and says, if you own a business, you need to have a business attorney. That's what actually gave us some of our early success, is to offering a service that it was normally behind closed doors or by referral only, kind of out to the mass market, and that's been very, very successful for us. We certainly do help small market. I've helped pet sitters. I've helped bait shacks. The bait, when you fish, a guy sells bait, and he was trying to sell the business to someone else, and the dollars weren't big, but they were big to him. And it's the same process, whether we're doing seven figures, six figures, or four figures. There's a call and a need for good, proper legal representation because we want it to be done correctly.
So can you tell me a bit about yourself? What really inspired you to come into this profession? Like what was that moment that inspired you to like this is where I'm going to join?
Well, I was at college, and I was in a fraternity, and the fraternity was having a large, loud party. And before too long, the university security pulls up to our fraternity house, and you have to shut it down. And there were probably some underage students there consuming alcohol, which is against the law in the state of Missouri, I was born and raised, where I'm from. And so my fraternity brothers all collectively came into the fraternity house and they said, Brandon, go talk to them. I
Okay.
had no reason to, okay. I went out and I structured a deal for them. I said, we will clean up not only our house, we will clean this entire block tomorrow morning. And if you'll give us the grace of a half hour or an hour to finish up our party and get everybody out of here. They went for it. They said, we have a little more time. Turn the music down, but everybody needs to leave in the next 30 minutes to an hour. Tomorrow morning, you clean the entire block. And by God, we did. And from there, I had a reputation for being a negotiator, being a peacemaker, a deal maker. And it's served me well ever since. Was that the aha moment that I should be an attorney? Maybe, but it certainly set me on a path of there's more common ground than you think out there. Even parties that are two business owners that start off with the best intentions, but find themselves at cross purposes down the road. Look, there's still some kernel of agreement, even if they are warring and sparring, that we can build on and be like, okay, what will it take to wreck each other, wreck this company, or cost way more than it needs to? And that's truly, whether it's a gift or a skill I've developed, I'm happy to share that with everybody else.
So, as you were describing the story, might have gone through many cases. Can you share with us one typical challenging story so far that you have faced?
Recently had the case of a physicians group that was trying to stitch itself together. There were two physicians, and they wanted to bring on a third physician, and they'd gotten somewhat into the deal. The older physician that owned the practice first didn't want to give up a lot of control. The two physicians that were younger and wanted to come into the practice, they wanted, like a lot of young professionals, they wanted control and they wanted voting and they wanted money and they wanted it quickly. My job was to fashion a multi-year transition plan so that for the first few years, no, the older doctor had a trump vote or a controlling interest in all decisions. And then for a few years, they would share the power. And then at some point, the older doctor would step back and let the younger doctors run it, whilst everybody making good money, but everybody got their needs met. There's an old expression in lawyer with attorneys, and that's a lean compromise is always better than a fat lawsuit. Lawsuits are destructive. Lawsuits are expensive. We don't mind loss. We do litigation here at our law firm. I don't handle it personally, but the only folks that win in litigation are us. We're going to get paid whether you win or lose. Let's see if we can't make a deal that you get you most of what you want without gambling or without the risk of losing your business or losing more money.
So this is something like I would like to ask. I have followed Suits. If you have seen Suits, the season,
Oh,
the
yes.
yes. So how close it is to the actual profession to what they show in the
In
series?
I get that question because my area of law, mergers and acquisitions, does follow what Suits does. It's the only show. All of the other law programs over the years, Boston Legal, all the way back to Ally McBeal, Law and Order, all the any sort of these legal dramas. They never really got into the merger and acquisition sphere. Now theirs are always slightly more dramatic. There's always millions of dollars, and there's always a smoking gun. There's always, oh, we found the one thing. And that makes for good television. It makes for good storytelling. But the actual meetings, the stakes, yeah, some of that is kind of is fairly accurate. Suits, and I got on the Suits bandwagon a little bit late. I generally don't look at legal dramas. Yeah, I see it every day. Why do I want to spend my time watching that? But
Absolutely.
I do watch some of the episodes, and I go, yeah, that's actually the words they use, the processes, some of the things that they're going through are actually the words and processes and the language I speak every day. Suits, funny you mentioned, Suits does actually get the M&A side of things. I would say 60% right.
Wonderful. You get the actual live experience that we watch it on TV, right? So, Brendan, I see there is a lot of technology advancements. AI is coming into place. What are your thoughts, how AI will affect how businesses look at legal firms, and what kind of misconceptions people have about AI in business and legal actions?
Great question. We use AI here at our firm. I love technology. If it's new and shiny, I'm going to look into it. I just had a meeting with another law firm. We're talking about doing some business together, and they were steadfast that it will never replace the hard work and the brain power of an attorney. And I disagreed respectfully. AI can review a document looking for one or two things that I'm telling it to look for far faster than I could. And, I'm over 50 years old. I don't want to spend an hour reading a very long 80, 100, 200 page document looking for one thing or looking for one or two things. yes, you can do keyword, you can word search on it, but I'm looking for a concept, and that's where AI. And we actually have some AI software built for lawyers that we purchased here at the law firm. Excellent company out of California. ChatGPT does not do a good job of it. We all made fun of the lawyers that blindly used ChatGPT to create documents, and ChatGPT didn't know any better. It invented citations. Citations is the showing your work, whether it's a scientific paper, a legal brief, or a financial statement, you do have to sort of cite your source, show your work. These were just complete, they looked good, they looked like good words on the paper, but they weren't actual real law controlling legal precedent. And so those attorneys were disciplined and disciplined appropriately and correctly for that. We use it as a tool. I use it to get the ideas or an outline built. I want to say these things. I want it to cover these points, and I can get a first draft out of it that I can then refine. As a time saver, fantastic. We use it for research. Now, we've always had legal research. Even when I came through law school, we were pivoting from book research, paper book research to early Westlaw. And that became Westlaw, LexisNexis, Westlaw, Thomson Reuters. You might be familiar with all of those. Those are the lions, the titans of of legal research. But now, we have custom built AI that can go to, I need the Illinois law on collections, and I have it in seconds. I don't even leave in the old days, I would have to go somewhere, literally physically go find a book that has that in it, or go find an attorney that had that information in his head. So AI is coming. It is not to be feared. It is not the solution. I don't think it's going to replace the legal profession. I think it will replace researchers. I think it may put a few clerks out of business, where instead of three clerks, you might just need one.
Yeah.
It doesn't draft. And of course, all of our Florida bar, I practice in the state of Florida as well as New York and Missouri. All of our individual bar associations have rules saying you're not allowed to exclusively use it. We are responsible for everything that comes out. Like physicians, we're given a number. I have a bar number in each of my states. You put your license number on it, everything you sign, and you're putting your license on the line, your reputation and your license behind what you say. That's certainly not something you trust a technology that's less than 2 years old. And certainly the client aspect of it. I have to understand what the client is looking for, even if the client may not be able to articulate it well. My job is to see the problems and see the problem behind the problem, or the longer view, the horizon. Um, that the client, like, if you do that, you're going to have these three problems a year from now. I love when that happens. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Well, I think about it because I've dealt with this problem before. So I love AI. All of our research has gone that way. We certainly use CRM. If you can't track the internal metrics of your law firm, how do you know if you're succeeding? Did you have a good month or a bad month? This is any industry. If you don't know your numbers, how do you know? If you just look at your bank account at the end of the month, I mean, yeah, you have some money, but are you growing, or are you shrinking? How much, what did it cost you to make that profit that month? And early on in my career, early on when I opened my law firm, I didn't bother. I didn't look at the profit and loss. I didn't look at the balance sheet. I just knew that we had more money than we did last month. That's clearly not enough. You know that.
Yeah, makes sense. Brendan, on the same topic regarding generative images, will there be any legal action to a company? Is there any law when an generative image makes any copyright issue?
That is interesting. We're seeing a lot more of that. What is fair use? How much can you alter an image to make it yours? There's certainly use for, I can certainly use certain things for educational purposes. If I put up a picture of Brad Pitt and it's in a legal CLE, I don't need to get, Brad Pitt or the photographer's permission. I'm
Absolutely.
simply
Yeah.
pointing out, this is Brad Pitt. Okay, that's not but if I'm monetizing it somehow, if I'm selling that, if I'm turning around and selling that a continuing legal education seminar for profit, and I've used if I use Navin Shetty's image in it, yeah, that will brook a cease and desist. So then we have AI, and well, who owns those people? There's been a whole, I've seen some Instagram, or I've seen some other whole videos of people just saying, "Hi, I
Yeah.
don't exist." And there's three little kids playing. They're like, "We look really good, but we don't exist either," and it's It's jarring because we've gone through the uncanny valley. They look very real. We're going to see even I can't wait to see we're going to have our first commercials without real actors or actresses. It's just a composite of what an American white male might look like, you know.
Absolutely.
And are you old enough to remember who Max Headroom was?
No.
He was a character in it was the story of a scientist that got pulled into the internet, and he had a couple of hit songs, I believe. But Max Headroom, I believe, was our first AI actor or AI character.
Wonderful. I need to look up that.
Oh, it's fun. It's a trip down memory lane for some of us.
Brandon, can you tell me how difficult or what is the biggest challenge in scaling a law firm?
Scaling is hard because there's always a there's always a desire to get a little bigger, make a little more money, but like any other industry, costs more money to take on more clients. There's only so many hours in the day, and it's still a very customized, very personalized process. I just can't stamp out more legal work unless I'm the one doing it. I can train an associate to do, think, and act, and put out work kind of like what I do. And that's one way of doing it. But to ramp up production in a law firm, production comes from people, and people are the hardest machine, the hardest thing, to build on, because that person has to understand how you work, how you do things. I work with a pretty good support staff. They handle things like our bookkeeping, which is actually done overseas. I have a scheduler, a social media person, and all of those kind of keep focused on just doing the work and production time, and keeping me out of the non-productive, non-billable kind of stuff. But scale is hard and I've gotten to a point where I've grown and then kind of came off it. I was like, I don't want to work any more hours. I don't think anybody wants to work more. And then there's the law of diminishing returns. I can take on four more clients. I will make on that much more money, but it costs me more money to do so, money or time. And that's the only two things we really have. One of my partners often says the only commodity lawyers have is time, and there's only so much of it. So I can't make more hours in the day. I could bill more hours in the day, but at some point you say, that's enough. I want to go home. I want to not do this at my desk any longer. I want to play with my kids, swim in my pool, have dinner with my wife.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You cannot burn out yourself. One final question, Brandon. What would be your advice to the upcoming law students entering into the business?
I coach attorneys, and just a couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of speaking at an inauguration for brand new attorneys. There were 50 or 100 of them in the room. A bunch of judges gave their advice, and they picked a few different attorneys to give this very advice. And it goes like this: know your worth. Always know how your firm makes money. That way, you're not being cheated. Know how much you make for your firm, or know your numbers always. It's not enough to be the best technical lawyer. There's a lot of them. And even in my firm, I'm not the smartest or the best lawyer there is. But I understand the numbers, and I understand marketing, and I understand communication. And I think that kind of brings my value to the firm. But as I tell young lawyers, know how the sausage gets made, or know how money gets made at your firm or in your firm, and know what your worth is, and don't settle for less. Senior attorneys take advantage of young lawyers all the time, and as soon as you stop working for somebody else and start working for yourself, and that doesn't mean you have to open your own practice. You just know that I'm worth this. Let's all, let's treat each other accordingly. So, and it's bold because our culture is very top heavy. You give, and this is many cultures, this is many industries. You give deference to those senior partners. Their name's on the door. They earned it, but they earned it in a different world. It is way different from 2020, post pandemic.
Yeah,
The practice is very, very different. And if you have to know where your clients are coming from, you have to know how to make sure your pipeline stays full. Even if you're a worker bee, you have to understand the process. Otherwise, you're committed to just being a worker bee for a very, very long time. I have worker bee attorneys in my firm right now. They don't want to be a partner. They don't want to go find new clients. They're perfectly happy, but they also work a lot more hours than I do.
wonderful. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you so much for an open and honest conversation. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Glad to do it.